rescue workers continue to sift through the rubble, searching for survivors. We are getting reports that people who are trapped in the rubble are able to call for help via their cellular phones, and the crews are working feverishly to try and rescue those people.
David, bring us up to date.
Well, Tom, more than 9.5 hours since the first attack, the smoke billowing from the hulks behind me is now more gray than black, indicating that the fires have diminished somewhat, but it's still an extremely dangerous situation.
Commanding officers were missing. They organized as best they could.
One of the FBI's main concerns right now is that other pilots trained in Florida may actually be terrorists. The weather has turned against search crews at the World Trade Center. This is a live picture of the rescue scene. Heavy storms passed through the New York area overnight, making a difficult job even harder. Scott Pelley spent Thursday at Ground Zero and files this report.
2 rescue workers who were feared lost were freed from the tomb that is the World Trade Center.
How dangerous this was. 2 firefighters looking for victims fell into a void and had to be rescued themselves.
Health officials continue to monitor the quality of the air, and they insist that it is safe. But nobody knows just how long these fires will burn. The earliest guess, at least another 6 more weeks, well into the new year.
I know it's hard to believe, but again, you have to get back to the intensity of that fire.
Mike Carter was there that day. and remembers what the air was like then, filled with the incinerated remains of computers, office furniture, carpet glue, and plastic piping.
For about a minute, I thought I was going to suffocate. It was like trying to breathe in a bucket full of sand.
Today, deep in the rubble, firefighters can still see I-beams glowing red.
No words to describe it. It's terrible.
Can you give me a sense of what you're seeing in there?
It's hard to explain. I mean, everything's destroyed. Where we were digging out, I mean, we were probably standing on the roof of the building as we were digging out, and all you're seeing is the tops of fire engines and cars, and trying to listen to see if anybody was in there.
Wait a minute, you're digging through the debris, and what you're finding are the tops of fire engines.
Right, and cars and whatnot.
What are you seeing in terms of the victims down there?
It's spread out. There's stuff and people, you know, everywhere.
They're running in shifts. Exhausted firefighters going out, fresh hands going in. They're coming from all over, some from Los Angeles, others from Michigan, and all around New York State. The firemen are working under hanging steel and buildings that threaten to fall. There was more smoke over Manhattan. Fires are erupting repeatedly, even 2 days after the attack.
The World Trade Center was more than just 2 towers in a 16-acre site. There were 5 other buildings and 11 acres of underground shopping, parking, and subway systems. It was incredibly dangerous work, but checking the damage in those underground areas was vital.
Loading docks?
It's a real labyrinth of different conditions down there. You have areas that are intact, you have areas that are partially collapsed, you have areas that are fully collapsed.
While the debris continued to burn above them, engineers Peter Rinaldi and Richard Garlock were part of the first team to explore right underneath the collapsed towers.
Mess.
They took this video as they picked their way through the tunnel into the Path train station at the lowest level.
Just trying to get a good overall view.
There was more smoke over Manhattan. Fires are erupting repeatedly, even 2 days after the attack. I see a fire now. We keep seeing fires again and again every few hours. What's
spot fire? It's very difficult to get inside that amount that rubble to extinguish every spot fire.
You don't want to pour a lot of water on there because that water will be filling some voids where maybe we have some people. So, you know, that the water will travel from where that spot fire is and seek the lowest level, and if that's where there's people, you know, you don't want to dump too much water in there.
This is the underground area where there is still hope of life, the extensive basement complex of the World Trade Towers. Rescue workers are searching with flashlights and listening with sensitive microphones for any sign of the survivor.
It was fairly well intact when we first got there.
This is platform B?
While we're underground, we find lots of remnants of life that was under there from before.
Even this floor is a little shaky.
Or you go by a newsstand and there's a newsstand and it's almost completely covered in dust, so you can't necessarily read what's on the stand. You just see it's kind of an outline of the candy and the magazines and the papers just sitting there from that morning. When you walk in and you see those kinds of things on the desk and you can read, on top of the paper, September 11th.
I'm not sure where to
put you back for that.
Part of our responsibility was going underground and mapping areas of intact structure so that we'd understand where the urgent areas for stabilizing the slurry wall were.
Slurry wall right there. This is the slurry wall. This is the slurry wall.
The contractor can then follow us and do his work and do the tieback.
Underground, it is pitch black, a disorienting darkness, punctuated by the crunching sound of footsteps as rescuers search for victims. Guided by periodic shafts of light shining down through the carnage above, this team from Miami is tracing subway lines, looking for people who might have taken refuge when the Twin Towers were hit. Another group of searchers from Washington State inches towards another possible shelter.
We're in Office Depot over here. This opens up into a large space. We may want to take a look.
The subterranean search of the 6 floors beneath the World Trade Center is both daring and haunting. There are so many strange discoveries. Newspapers untouched on their stands, trumpeting the big stories from the morning of September 11th. An arrest in an old bank heist leads the New York Daily News. There's an election headline in the New York Post. Dusty merchandise remains on store shelves, right where it was when the clerks ran to safety. A nearby subway train is trapped in the cave-in. Parked cars have been tossed around in their underground garage. And look at the clocks, frozen just before 10 a.m.
When you walk in and you see those kinds of things on the desk and you can read, on top of the paper, September 11th, it just transports you back to that. It's a frozen state.
Firefighters can still see I-beams glowing red. A virtual furnace some environmentalists feared could belch out chemicals and heavy metals, especially during the winter months.
We get a stagnating weather system, a high-pressure cell sitting over New York, their levels might rise again back up to where they were earlier.
But for those determined to recover the remains of those still buried in the smoldering rubble, a risk they can't see is one they're willing to take.
There was more smoke over Manhattan. Fires are erupting repeatedly, even 2 days after the attack. I see a fire now. We keep seeing fires again and again every few hours.
What's spot fire? It's very difficult to get inside that amount that rubble to extinguish every spot fire.
You don't want to pour a lot of water on there because that water will be filling some voids where maybe we have some people. So, that the water will travel from where that spot fire is and seek the lowest level, and if that's where there's people, you don't want to do it.
Let's dig like hell. But you really can't. You have to. They have a system, and you have to do it right because you can cause more damage than good. So we followed it. We concentrated on areas they figured there would be people. I think they only came up with one person actually that day. That was a survivor. There were many. Wasn't many bodies. There were many pieces, body parts. I saw 1 or 2 whole bodies, but there wasn't many. And just the debris fields is amazing. It's beyond anything I've ever seen like that. I've seen collapses and demolition buildings, but nothing like this was unbelievable. Like I said, there wasn't a door, there wasn't anything to be found. It was all disintegrated, all rubble. Concrete was small little pieces, not even slabs. No desk, no furniture, no computers, no phones, no anything. So I imagine the people were the same as the building, nothing left.
But there were some survivors, trapped in a mountain of rubble were the men of Ladder 6 and Josephine. At about 10:45 a.m., they radioed for help.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
45 minutes passed before the men heard anything back. It took even longer for rescuers to figure out where they were.
The stuff kept coming down, and my head got banged up a little bit. And then once I heard it stop, I said, okay, you're all right. You're still alive.
We got out of there around 2:30.
But it was pitch black. I mean, I've been in fires where you can't see anything. And this was just blacker than black.
I didn't believe what I was seeing. Then I wanted to jump up and down and tell everybody that I'm alive. And I was there and I survived. Could you believe I survived it? But I didn't say a word. Because I'm looking around and everybody's crying and guys are messed up and guys are hurt. And I'm saying, wow, this there's nothing to be happy about here. You know, there's a lot of guilt. I said, wow, then it went from being happy I survived it. In the split second, I said, well, why me that survived it?
Here in New York, yet another sad record is being set in the smoldering ruins of the World Trade Center. No other building site has ever burned this long. And as CBS's Lee Cowan reports tonight, concern is growing about possible toxins in the smoke.
Exactly 10 weeks to the day, in the middle of 16 acres of death. What still survives in this blackened wasteland are the fires, smell,
we try to
and the
keep
smoke.
hope.
It's constant smoke.
For Catherine McVeigh,
And we
it's her
look
new unwelcome
everywhere.
neighbor. This is the view out her living room window.
We even
just
crawled
one block
down
from
into the
site.
stores
It's a view
and the
she can
subway
now
tunnels
virtually
underneath the site. But as days turned into weeks, you began to accept. There just wasn't anybody to find.
By the end of this week, it's expected that the decision will be made to classify the mission not as one of rescue, but of recovery, meaning all hope is lost of finding survivors. Fire Commissioner Tom Von Essen is the man who will make the call.
It's a heavy decision, Commissioner. It's about as heavy as I'll ever face, hopefully. I've never dealt with anything like this. I don't know if anybody has, maybe in wartime, where a general had to, worry about so many of his troops being murdered. And these men were murdered. These men were innocent men that were coming in there they helped an awful lot of people get out of this building. We have 343 firefighters, fire officers, and EMTs missing. We've confirmed 32 of those to be dead.
How do you keep these men going hour after hour, day after day, particularly when their hearts are so heavy with the loss of their own?
It's like a child being taken in the night, you don't know. And that there is nothing, no recovery. It's amazing, And it doesn't help when the medical examiner tells you, well, we have 22,000 body parts. To you, it's a body part. To me, it's my child.
These firemen from Brooklyn have been taking the mountain down piece by piece, and many of them share the pessimism of the doctors.
It's what? It's just huge rubble.
Do you see anything of the victims, of the people who were in the building?
You've got 10 stories on top of everybody over there. It's just tough to say.
110 stories on top of everybody.
That's what the two buildings were.
Everybody's working together, the whole city, trying to get people out.
How do you dig this up?
Piece by piece.
And by hand, that's why you just make the chains and get the debris out. So that's all you can do.
110 stories at ground level.
110 stories at ground level.
If you get a shot, you'll see the antenna that was on top of the tower. It's at ground level.
And yet there are no people to be seen.
They pulled out a couple of Port Authority cops alive. Last night, this morning. Suppose they were like on the 80th floor from what we heard. But that's it so far.
By the end of this week, it's expected that the decision will be made to classify the mission not as one of rescue, but of recovery, meaning all hope is lost of finding survivors. Fire Commissioner Tom Von Essen is the man who will make the call.
It's a heavy decision, Commissioner.
One of the FBI's main concerns right now is that other pilots trained in Florida may actually be terrorists. The weather has turned against search crews at the World Trade Center. This is a live picture of the rescue scene. Heavy storms passed through the New York area overnight, making a difficult job even harder.